Good morning, my friends. Today it's a pretty cloudy, gray day. I'm not sure what the weather is like outside. It's kind of that weird, awkward phase of the year where sometimes it's cold, sometimes it's not that cold. I don't really know what to wear in this period of time. I sometimes wear my winter coat, and sometimes it's a bit too much, and then I end up taking off layers, and then I have to put on more clothes, and then it's a big mess. It's a big mess outside in the world, weather-wise, real life too. But that's always going on. What can you do? So today, I have my list of topics here. I'm going to be discussing cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is the phenomenon where people are made fun of online, either by anonymous people or real-life people. It's not really relevant. The whole point is that it's generally through some sort of form of social media. I think there's a distinction between a public humiliation versus private. Private cyberbullying might be like an email or a private message, someone telling you that they don't like you, which is generally much better, honestly, than public cyberbullying. Private cyberbullying, it's just one-on-one. There's nothing there's nothing the world can see that comes from it. Public cyberbullying is when you're basically exposed for usually something, or people just generally make fun of you on a public setting, and other people sort of join in to the feed of cyberbullying. As someone that has had this happen numerous times, generally starting in around 2015, around that era, it is a very difficult thing to go through, and it turns you into someone where you believe the things people are telling you, because it's different than, because I was bullied regularly in high school, whatever, like anyone else, and it's sort of easy to sort of shove it off and not really care as much. It still affects me, I guess, but not so much as it did online. Online was a whole different story. And the reason for that is, in the school setting, usually where it's at, there's usually like only a few people bullying you. It's never really a large group of people. If that happens, usually it's very rare. And whenever you get bullied, it's usually by, a minor group of people. Maybe they're higher up on the social ladder and they sort of just pick on you. Maybe it's like 3 or 4 people, and that's usually it. And you usually just kind of have bystanders who don't really do anything, and then you have like a group of friends who also kind of bystand and don't really do anything. Cyberbullying is very different because it ends up involving people generally that you don't know or have no contact with, and there's a sense of moral implication that comes with cyberbullying, right? There's the concept that, when you're cyberbullied, it's basically meant to demoralize you and make you feel like you're less of a human being, because it's, first of all, on a much larger scale. People's inhibitions are sort of broken down, and they feel like they have the power to sort of bully you. And then there's the added notion of, if you're having an online argument or something like that, you have the comment upvotes and all of that, which generally, is a social dynamic as well. People tend to, even if you're reading something and there's like the other side that's getting no likes in any of their comments, they'll generally not get any likes in general by people even who agree with them, mostly because they're afraid of judgment, or they're afraid to step in and get involved. This is another thing that sort of affects people's psyches, is seeing like people sort of combat them online, and then them getting a bunch of likes, like as if it's a social hierarchy, so to speak. And it makes people feel like they're wrong in some sort of way. And it's different than real life. Real life, there's generally like some sort of physical intimidation factor going on. Online, it's very psychological, intellectually based. Generally, it's usually the cyberbullying comes from a place of affecting people's intelligence or their morality, so to speak. In real life bullying in high school, most of the time, it comes from a physical perspective, right? It's like someone who's physically weaker, who can like get beaten up or pushed around and they can't fight back because of the physical size. On the internet, it's all about intellectual power, or who can get in the most likes on their comments, so to speak. So that being said, I think these are two things that are, I'm not going to say they're toxic. I think they're just generally a part of life. The cyberbullying aspect is very different. It's a different animal to deal with. And I think instead of, there's a lot of campaigns like stop cyberbullying, avoid cyberbullying, or stop bullying in general. I think that's like the wrong way to go about it. I think bullying in general is always going to happen in one form or another. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, obviously, but we need to recognize where it's coming from and not try to stop it, but to make people sort of deal with it. And I think that was the thing that helped me the most, was not, getting rid of cyberbullies, and if people were harassing me, reporting their Twitter accounts and stuff like that. That didn't really benefit me in the slightest, because it still affected me psychologically. It still made me feel like an immoral person, and it made me act out in a way that was, not necessarily positive. It was actually quite negative. When I had to reflect this hatred towards me, it ended up coming out in ways that were toxic, and it creates a feedback loop of cycles when people sort of address you as being immoral, and you get pissed off and you say something you didn't really mean to say, and then that gives them even more ammo to fuel their hatred towards you and call you even meaner things. And it's this constant cycle, and this happens not just with people, it happens to a lot of famous people in general. It creates like this whole dynamic of moral implication, like we're all of a sudden act as judges, and we can sort of judge people's character online without actually knowing anything. And I think it's fair to say that there's some people maybe who have done bad things in the past, and we can, put that in perspective and say, okay, well, I'm not going to support this person. To me, though, that comes from a personal responsibility. Going out on a limb and publicly criticizing them, or posting up little articles, or trying to convince people not to support these people, or telling people that you shouldn't support them, or even going as far as saying I can't be friends with you if you support this person. That's when it gets to the point where you're just reflecting that negativity or that hatred or whatever you want to call it. And that, to me, is the lack of responsibility that we have, especially online, dealing with cyberbullying. And that comes from a place of people who act as bullies, or act as bystanders, or act as the person getting cyberbullied in the first place. I know for me, dealing with it was just sort of acknowledging the fact that these people don't matter in the grand scheme of things. These people are not God. They cannot judge me, in a sense, even though that's a cheesy line to say. That's the reality, is that people cannot judge you no matter how much they try. That at the end of the day, 100 years from now, every single person, well, most people on the planet Earth that are living right now are going to be dead. We can just push that up 150 years. Certainly everyone on Earth will be dead, unless we find the path to immortality, which I don't think we will. But regardless, everyone will be dead that we know. So, all this stuff of us judging each other, and all this bullying and all this other stuff is kind of pointless in the end, because we're all going to die. And then, what happens after that? It's either, nothing happens, or God judges us himself. So that's the reality. So cyberbullying is both a waste of time to do it, and on the receiving end, if you're being cyberbullied, it's a waste of time to feel sorry for yourself that you are getting cyberbullied, because who gives a shit? I've been cyberbullied a lot, like I've said, and it's difficult. I will say, it's like you need to be mentally tough to deal with that kind of shit. And at the end of the day, it still happens from time to time, and it's whatever. That's life. People will bully you, and you just you have to deal with it. Um, the one thing you shouldn't do is give up on something because somebody bullies you or if they think that what you're doing is wrong. If you believe that this is like a passion or you believe that it makes you fulfilled, then you should go ahead with it. Obviously, this discounts violent crimes that are obvious that I don't really need to bring up. I'm just talking about, doing art or whatever you want to do. A lot of that is going to be judged by people in a negative way, even if it's the right thing. Especially if it's the right thing, it's definitely going to be judged by people in a negative way. One of my examples that I sort of like to think about a lot is there was this girl, a white girl, who was going to prom, and she decided to wear this authentic traditional Chinese dress, to which people started getting really upset about and basically ruined this girl's week, bullying her. And that's cyberbullying, right? Regardless of how culturally ignorant or imperialistic her actions were, which I don't think they were. It definitely wasn't an act of making fun of someone, but even still, reflecting that hatred back and thinking that it's some sort of positive outset, or like as if your feelings are more important than someone else's, or you think that you're justified in doing something like that, is it creates more problems in the world than you're actually solving, right? You're taking a problem and you're just making it an even bigger one, just like 100-fold bigger than it already was, which is the problem with cyberbullying, that people feel like they're justified in doing it, which is the difference online versus in real life. In real life, generally, it's just a physical sense of bullying. Online, it's all about morality and intellectualness, right? It's all about, I'm a better person than you. You're an evil person. And I think that's the aspect of cyberbullying that's really prominent nowadays. It has nothing to do with the physical aspects, although it might be. Some people, body shame people or whatnot online, and that's pretty common. But the most of what I see is either being intellectual superiority or morality. Those are the two main things that I find. So, anyway, those are my thoughts on the subject, and I hope you have a wonderful day.